Well, it's a rainy, windy, nasty day out today, so it's a good day to be inside editing videos. Thought I'd go ahead and put this video together of herring surveys in Hobart Bay on May 3rd and May 10th. On May 3rd, I took Katie up to Hobart Bay to do a little herring survey. I didn't mount the GoPros onto the airplane because I figured it wouldn't be any different than the last video I took, the last trip I took up to Hobart Bay, and it wasn't. But I did do a little bit of video recording with the cell phone camera, so I'm going to edit this into the video, and then I'll add on the flight with Tom on May 10th. So as I didn't have a video recording from the airplane with the GoPros of the takeoff and everything, I went back and found an old video. Since they're all pretty much the same, taxiing out into the Wrangell Narrows, warming the airplane up, taking off to the northeast, and then turning to the north to head up to Hobart Bay. It's all pretty much the same stuff. Oh, again, we're just taxiing out to warm up, and we'll take off and head north. Looking east into Farragut Bay and in the mountains up Farragut River as we head up the north arm of Farragut Bay. We'll cross over the peninsula here over into Port Houghton. And there's Katie in the back seat having a good time. A little bit rough here, holding the camera and trying to fly at the same time, and I kind of jerk the camera around a little bit so it doesn't make a good video, but it is a video. So anyway, we'll head across here over into Port Houghton. Over Hobart Bay right now, looking at inner Hobart Bay, and the logging camp is right over the nose. We look down here, we can see a few little schools of herring, and just about right at the bottom of the screen, almost dead center, there's a bunch of sea lions right there feeding on herring. We're counting those. There's a few more little groups of sea lions around the area too. But then we got a humpback whale just right at the top of the screen there, just right of the center. And watch it, and you can see its trail in the muddy water there. There's muddy water, is fresh water coming down off the mountains and from the snow melt and stuff, discolored floating on top of the salt water. Well, anyway, it's almost dead center, just on the lower part of the screen. There's the whale just surfaced right there, and that's a good sign that there's herring in the area. Whales like to eat the herring. You can kind of make out the schools of herring. They're just kind of in the lower center of the screen. You can see where the sea lions are popping up, where the white water is, you see them splashing in the water there. But anyway, there's a school of herring there, and there's a couple more back behind us. So we've got those mapped out and counted. There's a logging camp right there showing up now. And we'll head out this little peninsula and circle around the bay, and then head up on north towards Windham Bay. And we're just outside of Hobart Bay now, going north up the shoreline. The little spit that sticks out here we call the CAA site. It used to be a radio range navigation site there from the early days of radio navigation on the airplanes. And right over the nose is Sunset Island, looking up Stevens Passage towards Juneau, about 70 miles away from here. Point Hugh just to the left of the nose, and Admiralty Island, looking at Admiralty Island now. Well, this is as far north as we're going to go. This is Windham Bay. The mountains right there, just the other side of them is Endicott Arm. It goes up into Tracy Arm and the glaciers and stuff over there. It's a real popular spot for the cruise ships to go. And again, we're looking out into Stevens Passage, Point Hugh over there on the left. So anyway, we're going to turn around here and head back home, head back south. Well, we just came around Point Hobart again into Port Houghton. We're going to fly along this north shoreline of Port Houghton again, looking for any fish and just enjoying the day and the view. We're headed back home. Going by 12 Mile Creek now on Kupernoff Island. It's Duncan Mountains there in the background. Little pass goes on through there to Portage Bay. And this is, like I said, 12 Mile Creek, and it's about 12 miles from town, so we're on our way back to Petersburg. So this is the start of the next flight on May 10th, flying with Tom up to Hobart Bay. Now, the one camera I had mounted above the wing was taking pretty good pictures, but the colors were washed out on it, I think because the reflection off the yellow on the wing and everything washed out the picture, and anyway caused it to not get as good a saturation of color and as sharpness as it could have. So I decided I would try a little experiment and move that camera down here onto the wing strut and the other camera over onto the other wing strut. Well, that didn't work as well as I had hoped. This, as you can see, the camera wasn't tightened up tight enough, and it just swung down, and we got a good picture straight down. So anyway, that didn't work the way it was planned. Well, we got over here to the North Shore outside of Farragut Bay, north arm of Farragut Bay, between there and Bay Point. And we saw quite a bit of sea lion and whale activity here along the shoreline. And as we got to looking, we could see schools of herring down there. They were pretty hard to see the first time because of the way the sun angle was and the dazzle on the water. You can kind of see the dazzle on the water there down between the floats as we come around here now. But we circled over it a few times, and every time we circled over it, we saw more signs of herring, more herring down there on the beach. I would suspect that those herring would have spawned by later in the afternoon. But anyway, there was a pretty good show of herring there, as well as whales and sea lions, and lots of excitement. Now we come out here on the south shore of Port Houghton now, and going across these little islands and reefs. We'll head over to the north shore and then follow it out to Point Hobart. Now we saw a lone sea lion down here along the shoreline. Fish and Game has a bunch of iPads set up. They got a new program in it where they can map the fish out and things like that, and set up with a camera on it and a GPS and all kinds of fancy whiz-bang stuff. So Tom wanted to find a single sea lion that he could take a picture of and kind of calibrate his camera and his ability to use it. So, like I said, we found a lone sea lion right here, so I circled over it once so he could get his camera and get his stuff together and figure out how to use everything. We got up here to Point Hobart, and all of the bird activity and stuff had moved over into a little different bight on the end of Point Hobart and moved to the north a little bit. And we got going along there, we started to see quite a few fish along the beach. Unfortunately, they don't show up here on the camera. I was hoping maybe they would, but we circled around here, and of course, again, the same thing as we did at Farragut Bay, with the light conditions the way they were. Every time there was some herring right there between the floats. There's some more along the beach right there. Anyway, every time we circled around here and the light conditions changed a little bit, we could see more herring down there. There's a good chance those herring were coming in and would probably spawn. There's a lot more sea lion activity there and whale activity and stuff like that around in the area. There's some more herring there, just disappeared underneath that left float when I started my turn. Well, we're going to circle around here a couple times and check it out. Like I said, every time we circled, we got a little different perspective on it and saw more fish. So we'll circle around here, and then we'll go ahead and continue the flight just exactly the same way we usually do. We'll go around through Hobart Bay and up to Windham Bay, and then things change. There's a school of fish out there in the middle, just disappeared underneath the wing. I didn't see those when we were flying. The biologist from Juneau had flown down here a couple of days earlier and saw a herring down in this area. We're on Semore Canal, Admiralty Island. Anyway, this is their area, and they couldn't get down here on this day to check it out, so they asked us to come over and do a survey here. Well, that Point Hugh there is right across from Windham Bay. Windham Bay is where we usually turn around and head back south, but so instead of heading back south, we went across Stevens Passage to Point Hugh, flew around Point Hugh on the outside, and then back on the inside up in Semore Canal. And we're coming out on the west side of Semore Canal now along the Admiralty Island shoreline. We kind of call this area Big Bend. Actually, we're coming up to a point now where we come around and that gets into the Big Bend. We're going by, I think that's Pleasant Harbor that we just went by. But anyway, we're looking along here for herring for the Juneau area, and this is a little different. I've done this before in the past, but like I said, this is generally Juneau's area, and we just come out to do that for them today. Well, one of the things we look for the presence of herring when we can't see them are wildlife activity, birds, sea lions, of course, and whales, humpback whales. And we've seen a few humpback whales over on the other side when we went down it, but right Going underneath the toe of the float right now, I saw a bunch of whale activity there. And as we flew over it, they came back up again, and there were 7 humpback whales there in a group. While we circled around, they got their rest and whatnot, and then they dove back down again. Obviously, they were feeding on something. Well, the water's pretty deep here, and the herring wind up being deep in the daytime unless they're coming up to the shoreline to spawn. So it was pretty obvious there were herring there that the whales were working on. Anyway, we circled over them a couple times here and got a good look at them. And we're looking back up into Semore Canal now towards Juneau. Now we're going down to Big Bend now, looking along the shoreline here and off the shoreline for any schools of fish. And we're kind of going the wrong direction because the sun is in our face here, and that's not exactly the best direction for the sun for seeing down into the water. But we did see several schools of fish along here and some more whale activity and stuff, so it was pretty productive. Well, we're coming up on Gambier Point now. Gambier Island just ahead of us, Gambier Bay off to the right. And ahead of us, you can see the milk in the water. You can see the discoloration in the water. We're seeing a few more schools of fish along here as we go, and some more whale and sea lion activity. But like I said, looking ahead, we can see the spawn in the water up ahead of us. Well, this is Gambier Point coming up right in front of us, and that isthmus over there on the right side goes out, and then that's Gambier Island. Gambier Island Light is on the end of it. And we could definitely see spawn here, almost all the rocks and areas over here coming up to, well, especially right around the point. You can see it now as underneath the propeller spinner there on that point coming up. There's some milk in the water there. That's all spawn. And then that whole shoreline on that isthmus over there is got a lot of spawn on it. I'll switch over here to the cell phone camera. I think I got a little bit better pictures on that right now. All right, some of the dark that you see down there is fish. Some of it's just the kelp in the bottom structure. All the white you see is spawn. You can see the milk in the lighter color where it's washing away from the current and the tide. But there along, right tight in on the rocks and stuff, you see the really white stuff. That's eggs and spawn. That's a fresh, active spawn. The fish are actually spawning right there. So there's a lot of it along that isthmus, a little bit around this island when we come around this island, but out on the point of the island there's quite a bit more. I'm trying to fly and keep the airplane going and follow the shoreline here and hold the camera and get pictures of it all at the same time. I'm not doing a very good job with the camera, but I am doing a good job with the airplane. So that bottom edge of the screen right there, all along that whole shoreline, is a very active spawn area. That's all spawning fish and all spawn down there on that shoreline. And then there's no active spawn right through here. This is just milt getting washed out with the tide. But then as we come around the point here on the rocks, right out there on that one reef there, that's active spawn right there too. There's a lot of animals that take advantage of these herring when they come in to spawn to feed on them. You get a lot of sea lions and whales and seabirds and eagles and all kinds of things. If you look down in this one little bite right here, you can see a whole bunch of seagulls working on the eggs as the tide has gone out and exposed the eggs. Surf scooters, they dive on the eggs when the tide is in, and they'll clean them up on the bottom. Whales come in, of course, and they feed on the fish themselves. Eagles will feed on the fish that die or the ones that get too close to the surface. And the sea lions feed on the fish. And seals too. You get right up here, there's a couple of whales right in the right hand corner just went by. There's a bunch of sea lions right down below us in the center of the screen now. And as I focus in and come in on this point that sticks out here, you'll be able to see the sea lions herding the fish. There's a big school of fish right there, and you can actually see them moving as the sea lions go through them and herd them around. Oh, Tom wants to stop up here and see if he can get a sample of the fish. We've got a 5-gallon bucket in the airplane, and Tom has a cast net, and he's a professional cast netter from way back. So I'm going to fly around here and check things out and look for a landing spot, and we're going to go in on that point up there ahead of us off of Gambier Point and see if he can't find a spot where he can get a sample of fish. So right now what I'm doing, we've already surveyed the area and mapped out the spawn areas and stuff like that. I'm just flying around here looking for my landing area. I pretty much know which way the wind is blowing. It's coming from the north here, coming off from the direction that we're headed now, or almost the direction we're headed now. So I've got to look at the area and look for any rocks or anything like that, and look for an approach into the beach where we can come in safely without damaging the airplane or anything, and get off where Tom can get out and get a sample. So you'd have to look not only for a safe place to land, you have to look for a safe place to take off too. So you want to have plenty of room to take off. So I'm flying over the area looking for any obstructions in the water that we might hit on takeoff or on landing. Again, I've already checked the direction of the wind. We want to land into the wind and take off into the wind if possible. And we got to watch out for any other obstructions. I've had problems with whales coming up in front of me, and sea lions and sea otters and things like that, even after checking and clearing the area for rocks and logs and other debris. And so anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff we got to look for before we can make a commitment to land. So this was kind of a rugged spot to come in to land. This is real rocky, and of course the rocks are all covered with barnacles and kelp. Well, I didn't want to come in here under power and hit any of these rocks and damage the float, so I cut in as close as I dared, drifted in as close as I could until we run out of forward momentum, and then I used the paddle to come on in. Wind was blowing here offshore, so it was a little bit quite a bit of paddling to get it to come in here. And then I was really nervous about jumping out on those rocks because they were really gnarly, rough, and well, here I'm trying to push the airplane in with the paddle, pushing down on the rocks, but they drop off so fast there was no purchase to them. And the wind was blowing me backwards at a pretty good rate. It had a little bit more wind here than I thought by looking at the water. But anyway, we're going to get in here on the shore and not do too much damage to anything. Nothing to the airplane anyway. Well, I'm not as young and spritey as I used to be, hopping off on that rock, and it was just a little peak right there. It wasn't a good solid spot, and I was worried about slipping on the kelp, which is full of herring roe, and then there's barnacles on there that are rough, and I just knew I was going to go in face first right there, but I just managed to get wet up to my ankle on one foot, trying to get in there and hold the airplane against the wind. It wanted to drift off on me and not get my foot tangled up in the rope and then not fall on my face. Anyway, it wasn't the most agile I've ever been, but we made it without any serious damage. And anyway, like I said, we didn't damage the airplane any at all. We got off here. The water was too clear for Tom to do any sampling right here. The fish are too flighty here, so he went and walked around the shoreline over there into another spot where the spawn was really thick, and he was able to get some samples over there. But meanwhile, I stood here and tried to keep the airplane from floating away and falling on my face in the barnacles. Well, we landed here so that Tom could get some samples. There's spawn here. Yeah, I don't know whether it'll show up here or not, but this kelp has spawn on it, herring eggs on it here, and they're spawning pretty good right here off this point. In fact, there's a whole bunch of sea lions right out there feeding on the herring. There's a lot of herring swimming around here. That's Gambier Island right there. I don't know whether this is Gambier Point or what, but just had a couple of whales went right by here. Could have reached out and touched them, but this is it. Well, there's Tom over there trying to figure out where he can throw his cast net out, but the water here is pretty clear, and so the fish are kind of spooky. I think he's going to go over there. There's spawn over there on that edge. You can see fish flipping all over the place here. There's the sea lions. Okay, there's the sea lions out there. And another bunch of them right there. We're on the Admiralty Island shoreline now on the west side of Stevens Passage, and right over there is Point Hobart. They're spawning all along that shoreline over there on Gambier Island. The tide's out now, so it's not an island, but normally it's an island, or when the tide's in, it's an island. Like I said, this kelp is not a real thick coating of eggs, but there's eggs on the kelp here. I mean, it's not thick on the kelp, on each individual kelp, but everything here is coated with eggs. Let's see if we, oh yeah, they want a school of fish, a bunch of fish right there. So there's white in the water down there. And that's spawn. See, they're right there. I see them flashing every once in a while right here, and they're spawning. Well, there goes. There they go. There they go. Not very big fish. So Tom made his way over there to that other little point, and I can see from here that the water is really milky. There he is. I can see from here that the water is really milky, so we might have a better luck getting some fish, some samples of fish there. Well, Tom just made a cast. Got a pretty good jag of fish out of that cast. Dumping him in his bucket now. It's hard for me to hold still here. I'm balancing on a little peak of a rock, holding on to the airplane while it tries to drift off. Yeah, I can. Are you ready? Okay, I'll be there if I don't drown. All right, I got back in the plane without killing myself. I'm kind of stiff and not moving very good anymore. Oh, anyway, I had drifting off, sailing back away from that little point where I was. I'm going to taxi down over to this other point over here, pick up Tom over there. There's a rock right here in front of you. All right. I'll get out and give you a hand here, Tom. Well, that was fun. Tom got almost a full 5-gallon bucket full of herring there. They'll send him off to the lab to do genetic sampling on them, or age sampling, something like that, figure out what the age classifications of the spawning fish are and the average size and whatnot. So we just took off. It's Gambier Island Light, Gambier Island right there on the left side, and we're coming out of Gambier Bay. We got Hobart Bay off in the distance there, just to the left, and Five Finger Light just coming up underneath the cowling of the engine, and we're going to be headed that direction back for home. That little point coming right up on the left there is where we just spent the last 45 minutes or so. You can see the real white spot there where Tom was catching the fish. And I had the airplane out on the point so I didn't spook the fish all away from him, but this is right where we just spent the last few minutes. And the fish are still there. Anyway, we're on our way home.